Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Friday edition of the Hog Talk podcast presented to you by Sterling Soap Studios. We have Andrew Hutchinson on once again in our monthly meeting. We had a lot to talk about since the last time. We got fall camp. We got somebody, Dave Van Horn got his money, and is there a quarterback controversy or is there not? We'll get all into all that, but I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And Andrew, thank you once again for joining us today.
Yeah, had fun last time. Let's do it again.
Sir. Let's roll. Well, we'll get right back into it because, fall camp has started. You've gotten a good look at the team from what they've shown you. We've gotten a couple of weeks in. You've got a live scrimmage. We'll start with that. What was from what you could gather, of course, it being scrimmage, what was we'll go pros and cons. What was some good things you took away from it? And what was some things that really kind of concerned you from that scrimmage?
Well, first, we got to say these are things that we have gathered based on what they've told us because,
Yes.
Of course, they're not going to let us watch these scrimmages. So everything has to be taken with a certain grain of salt there, more so than just a regular old scrimmage, which is, if one side of the ball does well, the other is not doing well. So on that note, I will say it was encouraging to hear that Chris Marshall made some big-time plays because that's what you are wanting out of him. He is the guy you hope is going to be your go-to receiver. He's a 4- or 5-star recruit. He's got all the talent in the world. And it sounds like he had a really big day. That is the good thing. That is what you want to hear. But, of course, the flip side of that is somebody's giving up those big plays.
Mm-hmm.
And, the defense gave up some explosive plays. And that is something that the coaches and the players on that side of the ball have talked about wanting to clean up. And I will say – this week at practice, the couple of days I went to, there was 3 open practices that had viewing periods, and I went to 2 of them, and it did seem like the defense had a better day. So I will say that is a good thing, I guess. One day the offense does well, the next day the defense does well. You don't want one side of the ball dominating the other throughout the camp because then it's like, okay, do you have issues there? So I was encouraged by that, but the explosive plays, especially considering, you think back to last fall camp, that was like one of the major storylines was like the offense was just so explosive. There were so many explosive plays, and which, yes, the offense last year had some explosiveness to it, but we also saw the defense give up quite a bit as well. So you hope it's not a repeat of that, but we'll see. Again, it's hard to say on a scrimmage that no one actually saw.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the 100-point game by Will. That we seen the piece of paper, but did it really happen? I wanted to ask you too, and I don't know if many people's asked this to the media standpoint. Do you get a different vibe with Silverfield and his coaching staff, the way they present to the media their team? Do you feel like you're getting truly what they are going through at practice, or do you feel like, how in the past you're like, well, they've only let us see like 10 or 15 minutes of stretching or whatnot. They don't really give us real practice time. Do you think you're getting a different vibe from this coaching staff?
Okay, so here's the difference in terms of like how the media is handled. So like under Pittman during spring ball, he would open up everything. Everything was open. I think you usually close down the actual scrimmages.
Yeah.
But at the practices, if it was 2 hours, you got all 2 hours. You got to watch all of it. Now, some of it you would, not get to take video or take photos and stuff like that. So TV people, photographers would leave. But we could watch it and we could report on it. This year, and then once fall camp hit, they would only give us like 20, maybe 30 minutes.
Yeah.
With Silverfield, he didn't give us all of spring ball. He did cut that down, whereas about half of the practice that we got to watch. But in fall camp, it's continued like that. We get to watch about half of the practice. They have shortened it up this past week. I think as they get closer to the season, I think that's to be expected. But up to that point through the camp portion of camp, they have opened it up and, let us see more, which is appreciated. We get to see it, closer to season. As far as interviews are concerned, it's been pretty the same right now. We get to talk to the assistant coaches and players at that position group throughout the spring and then into the fall camp. One difference, though, that I really like that I think fans are going to appreciate is it sounds like they're going to let us talk to the coordinators during the season. We're going to get Tim Cramsey and Ron Roberts during the week, every week throughout the season. That was not the case under Pittman. He was very much from the Kirby Smart, Nick Saban tree where the assistants do not talk. And so that'll be nice. We get to ask the coordinators specific things about their side of the ball, on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and get some good insight there.
Yeah, and I think it helps with having the coordinators that Arkansas does. I mean, you look at Cramsey and just how they carry themselves. They seem like you're not worried about getting tripped up or saying something. I mean, I remember Cramsey got Tom Murphy was asking a question about the quarterback, and he's like, "Hey, you're not going to bait me there. I know what you're doing your job." And he was very respectful. I think I like that. He was very respectful about it and handled it well. He's just kind of jabbing with him back and forth. So I think they know that Silverfield can trust his guys to go out there and they know how to handle themselves in a press conference. But again, we're getting, because you see, hey, the defense gave up 700 yards to Georgia. We know we're probably going to get to hear from the defensive coordinator and not the coach give a, well, I don't know. I think that's going to be the most refreshing. Okay, so moving on with that position, we talked about offense, defense. What were some positions that really stood out for you that, okay, really surprised you? Okay, this could be an impact on the team that I didn't think was going to have an impact this year.
Yeah, throughout camp, I've been pleasantly surprised by the defensive line. There's still question marks. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's going to be a top 5 defensive line in the SEC or anything like that, but I feel like there's quality depth there. I feel like there's different guys that can rotate in and keep guys fresh, especially on the interior. There's quite a few guys there that are fighting. Danny Beal, an in-state kid's one of them as a true freshman. Haven't seen a true freshman defensive tackle contribute at Arkansas since 2016. So that would be a big, plus, thinking just for the future, getting that experience. So I'd say that's a position that's really, pleasantly been a pleasant surprise. Trying to think on the other side of the ball. I mean, I think the tight ends, they're maybe better than I expected, but I also had very low expectations for that group beyond Jaden Platt. I think we all know who Jaden Platt is and what he can do. I had serious questions, and I still have some, lingering things about that position, but, I think I've seen enough out of Ty Lockwood that makes me think he's a competent backup. Matt Adcock, he's a competent backup. Still curious to see how much those guys are going to be utilized in the passing game. But they're going to be out there for sure, if nothing else, for blocking purposes. So that's maybe a position that's been maybe a little bit better than I expected.
And I will go back to the wide receiver. You talk about Chris Marshall, but we were talking about this quarterback controversy. Is or not? We'll get into that in a second. But I really want to ask about Marshall. Do you feel, because we've seen it with Treylon Burks, do you feel like it's imperative to where he has to kind of be a NFL type receiver? If you're only going to go one guy, and that's one guy you got to count on, there's a lot of pressure on him to kind of be an NFL type talent, because we've seen what Burks did for the Razorbacks when he was here. Do you think there's going to be that kind of expectation, and that does he have that talent?
I think the talent is there. The consistency is the big question. I mean, of course, we could all talk about the off the field issues or whatever it is that led to his issues at previous schools. It seems like he's locked in on that regard. It seems like he is definitely working hard. He wants to be here. I've been impressed. I've noticed him a couple of times in some blocking drills where they've got they're throwing a screen out to the edge and he's having to go out and block guys. And I've actually been pleasantly surprised, because usually you think of these big ego guys oh, they're not gonna block, things like that.
They just don't have the skill. They're used to running down the field catching.
Yep, exactly. But he's not that way. He does seem involved in that aspect. So I've been pleasantly surprised in that. But can he be consistent in catching the ball? Drops have been an issue for him at Boise State. We saw it flare up big time in the red-white game back in the spring. So that is something I am concerned about. But I do think he has the potential to be a big-time, legit, go-to guy. But they need some other guys to step up. I mean, Jamari Hawkins is a guy who I think might be a little underrated. He's been playing a lot in the slot. He's from, coming over from Memphis, so familiar with the system, put up good numbers last year. And I think he's a guy that's going to be dependable. He seems to have a good rapport with KJ Jackson. What can CJ Brown do? Can Antonio Jordan or Courtney Crutchfield, two of these, big time, in-state guys that people have a lot of expectation and a ton of talent, can they step up and be a big time contributor? Again, there's lots of questions. I still like Ishmael Cece. I liked him last year before he got hurt when he came in from Stanford. So I think they really need some other guys to step up and help Marshall, because that's putting a lot on his shoulders to step up and be like the go-to guy. You really need someone else to kind of relieve some of that pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're talking about the tight ends. It's either him, because usually back when Burks, you had tight ends to throw to. You were able to kind of get the ball off of him or the attention off him. But I really want to ask about this quarterback controversy, because it was weird. It's been kind of puzzling to me, because you'll hear that, say, oh, of course, they're wanting to make it seem like, and I think we even touched on it the last time we talked, is there a quarterback controversy? Then we felt like KJ was starting to make a gap and take that leadership role. Now we're seeing that it's kind of come back to maybe there is a quarterback conversation. And to me, that kind of worries me this close to season, because if KJ has separated himself, now he's digressed, you kind of don't want that leading into an SEC season. But does that mean he's digressed, or has AJ really kind of started to pick up steam? Sorry.
I think we're reading way too much into it. I think we're reading into, comments made by Ryan Silverfield after a scrimmage. We're reading into what these coaches are saying. We're reading into the one period of team 11-on-11 action that the media gets to see. It's a lot of reading into it. I really don't think it's changed a whole lot in that. I think it is a true quarterback battle. I would say battle rather than controversy, just because it's like they're trying to figure out who's the guy.
Okay.
Now, if it lingers if they're rotating series against North Alabama, or they're both getting significant snaps against Utah, then I'd say, okay, maybe there is a little bit of a controversy here. But as of right now, I'm not too concerned about it. My hunch, I don't know this for sure. This isn't like
Hutch's hunch right here on Hog Talk Podcast. There we go.
My hunch is that they're going to settle on a guy next week. Okay. Because that is when the practices get completely closed to the media. We're not going to be able to go in there and be like, oh, AJ's with the ones today, KJ's with the ones tomorrow, or, oh, wow, KJ's taking all the snaps with the ones now every single day. I bet they're going to try to play that close to the vest. Maybe it leaks. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know how good Silverfield is at kind of keeping things in-house. We'll find out. But I have a feeling that they're going to settle on one or the other, and I have a feeling it's going to be KJ. But who knows at this point? I mean, you talk to anybody in the media, we all pretty much feel the same way. We feel like KJ is going to be the guy. But that doesn't really mean anything, because I remember back in 2019, yes, it was Chad Morris who was terrible and awful and all that good stuff. But everyone who watched practice could tell Nick Starkel was the more talented quarterback over Ben Hicks. But it's like, but they still were very indecisive. They still were rotating quarterbacks, in the first game and into the season. That would be bad. I think that would be very, very bad. Right now, we're still 2 weeks out from the game. It's okay. And plus, there's still the strategic aspect of it. They don't want people to know who the starting quarterback is. Yes, you're not worried about North Alabama, but if you're Utah, Georgia, those teams are still getting in fall camp some work ahead to those opponents, and now they don't have the extra weeks of scouting to focus on just KJ. They're having to split their time between KJ and AJ, and I think that's a very minor, small advantage, but an advantage nonetheless. And if you're Arkansas, kind of got to take everything you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. In that North Alabama game, I mean, you want to take it. I know people, you can overlook it, but now is not the time, especially because Arkansas, not necessarily taking them lightly as in this aspect you're going to beat the brakes off them, but for development. You want to come in, and if you're KJ's your guy, you want him to come in and play a solid half of football, get his rhythm going, and then if they're up 42-3, then you bring in AJ in to get him quality reps. That's what we were missing a couple of years, where we couldn't get, and I think that's what happened when the starting quarterback went out. Now you got to bring the backup in. There's been no development other than practice to be able to give them the headspace to come in and, do it, solidify a drive. And that's going to be important because if, there's no depth on the line, get him hurt. But also you want to have confidence going into that Utah team that you are taking care of business against North Alabama.
That's something we'll probably talk about more as the game gets closer. But how does Ryan
Yeah.
Silverfield handle it against North Alabama? Does he, if they are up 42-3 at halftime, do they switch and bring in a bunch of backups, or because you're a first year coach, KJ Jackson isn't exactly the most experienced guy in the world? Do you let him play the third quarter just to continue getting those game reps and stuff like that?
Yeah, you bring up a good point because you're dealing with adjustments, and then how are you going to deal with the halftime adjustments? So I get your point there. Sorry.
No, yeah, but I mean, it's a good point because I mean, we saw it throughout, Sam Pittman's tenure. One of the things that drove me crazy is they would have these FCS games, they'd be blowing a team out, and they wouldn't put in the subs or backups or guys until like the fourth quarter. It's like, man, these guys need that experience. But I mean, I think you could make the argument this year. I mean, at least with KJ, I mean, maybe you bring out, maybe Braylon Russell isn't carrying the ball 20 times against North Alabama because you got to keep him healthy. But you know more about what you're getting with him. You know more about Quincy Rhodes. Maybe he only gets a half a play or something like that. But a guy like KJ, it could be beneficial to get him as much opportunity as you can. Now, you're probably not going to keep him in once it's, if they're up like 70-0 or whatever. But you cross that bridge when you get to it.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're hoping for that. But another thing, when you're talking about the running back room, I mean, from what they're talking about, you got 3 or 4 guys that can go. And running back, you can't just come in there and put them in for a series or a 3 down. You really got to get them some time to adjust to the blocking and finding the open holes and really see where you can get their talent. So, having that rotation in a game like North Alabama would be key because you can really hone in on who your top 2, who's your third down back that can come in and surely get you 3 to 4 yards on a third down situation. That's where you learn about your team. It's a dress rehearsal per se. No offense to North Alabama, but that's what you want. You want to be able to, you don't want to struggle in the second quarter or third quarter against North Alabama, even though the score may be 35-0. If you're struggling, that's where these red flags will come up. So it's a very important game that we're creeping up on. It's been faster here than we can even, I mean, before we blink, we're going to be talking next time we talk, be week 4, week 5 of the season. So it's gone by way too fast.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm ready to be talking about actual games, what we're seeing on the field. That's going to be so much a pleasant, change of pace.
Yeah, and we'll finish up with Dave Van Horn getting a new contract. I was honestly surprised, and you can enlighten us more on this. It was the vibe that I was getting, and with Dave Van Horn, he was one of them coaches that he had a program built, and here come NIL, and it just kind of changed the trajectory of his program, how he did things. And, he was talking about his grandkids, and you kind of seen this Bobby Petrino effect of you're getting older in time, and now you got grandkids, and that affects you differently. You got your kids, but now you have grandkids. So I was thinking maybe 2 or 3 years, Adam Hall. But I was really thinking, are we seeing the end of the era? And it's refreshing knowing, because me and Adam have talked about what's Arkansas athletics going to do in 3-4 years if Cal's gone, DVH is gone. That's why it's so important for this Silverfield project to work, because if you have nothing to count on, I don't know what's going to happen with this athletic program. But talk about, just how much that means. Dave Van Horn is getting his due pay. He's getting that contract through 31. And does that light a new spark under him where now, all right, let's go. I'm here through 31. Let's get a national championship.
Yeah, I mean, his deal already had been through 2031, the one he signed back in 2021. It was meant to be kind of like his lifetime contract where it took him through, retirement. But as you said, things have changed. The NIL era, the rev share era, this is all made. It's a brave new world out there. And I will give Dave Van Horn credit. He's adapted. He's having to do things he probably doesn't enjoy doing, like fundraising and things like that.
Yeah.
But he's still driven. Like, if I will say this, if he had already won, like if they had won back in 2018 and then finished it off in 2021 and won national championships both years, he had another couple titles.
Yeah.
Would he be retired by now? Probably.
Yeah.
That's my gut feeling. But this man is driven. This man wants to win a national championship. He's been so close so many times. I feel like he's going to
the closest you could possibly get without getting, inches. Inches away from a national championship. Me and Adams talked about that. Like, I think that has a lot to do with it. It's just seriously, you're watching the national championship trophy fall down in your hands and you drop the foul ball. I don't think you could get any closer than that of
Yep.
not winning a national championship.
Exactly. So I mean, I think this was more about just keeping him happy. Yes, he's earned the raise.
Oh,
He deserves to
absolutely.
be a top 5 paid coach in the sport, no doubt, even without a national championship. And I think having that the bonus in there for $1 million to win the national championship, that's perfect. I think that's great. It's
Yeah.
historic too, by the way. If people need to go check out our story at Best of Arkansas Sports, it's like the highest bonus for a college baseball coach, and honestly, it's like up there in the range for like a college football coach. Like I think it's
Wow.
around the same as like what Steve Sarkisian would get if Texas won a national championship, and he's making 10 something $1 million a year. $1 million when you're only making 2.1, that's almost 50% of your salary as a bonus. That's
like Mac McClung going and winning the dunk contest or the home run derby.
Exactly. It's truly historic in terms of percentage, that kind of thing. But I do think it's more so than anything. It's like, can they give him the resources to do what he needs to do? And I think they're working toward that. I think Dave is working toward that himself.
Yeah.
And as long as he has the resources to be able to compete, I think he's going to keep doing it until he can't anymore, or until he wins a national championship.
Yeah,
and then at that point, you start wondering, maybe he tries to retire.
Well, yeah, and there's been no, no secrecy about his, his relationship with the athletic director and stuff like. But it kind of makes you mentally shift. What do I belong here anymore? Can I work with this guy? And you start letting that get to you, and then you don't have the success of going to Omaha. I mean, because there is that standard at Arkansas. It's weird. They've never won a national championship, but it's almost like that's the standard, getting to Omaha and winning a national championship. And that eats at you. And I think, we're going to find this is going to be an important series or season to tell. He gets this new raise, this newfound glory. He's gotten no problem getting funding and getting players in. And now we're going to see, because I'm telling you, this Razorback fan base needs a national championship so bad. It doesn't have to be football. It doesn't necessarily have to be basketball. If you could get one of the big three, we've seen 94 and 64 celebrated for 40 years, 30 years, 60 years. It would be a recharge to this fan base that would light it on fire.
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas fans have suffered through so much. I mean, we don't even have to go through the list.
Exactly.
We all know it. We all experienced it. So I think it would be just a nice, refreshing thing for fans. But more than anything, I think it'd be great for Dave Van Horn. I mean, That dude loves Arkansas. He played here. He worked under Norm DeBryan. He came here. He left a great job up in Nebraska. He had that place rolling. He probably would have been just as successful at Nebraska as he has been here. But he came here, came home. We look at all these people who left and like a football coaches. You think of like a Gus Malzahn or a Rhett Lashley. I mean, these are coaches that are Arkansas people.
Yep.
And we want them to come home. But they didn't. Houston Nutt's one that did come home, and obviously didn't end great. But we don't get to see those stories too often, and to see it happen with Dave Van Horn, to be going into his 25th season, has been remarkable. And you got to hope for him that he gets over the hump and wins one eventually.
Exactly, because that's that one, because you feel for him. You want him, because how stoic he is, how humble he is, and how successful he's been. Like, you really, I'm not the biggest baseball fan, but yet you root for him because you know how much he's put into this university, and for him to gather that one. But we'll end up on this. So we're wrapping up another week of fall camp. You said they're wrapping up and they're going to shut practice down. When does that exactly start, or what can we see from now till the North Alabama game?
So they have another scrimmage on Saturday night. They're doing that one at like 9:15 in the evening to simulate the Utah kickoff. That is going to be closed. And then the last practice that has any availability to media is on Sunday, but I don't believe any of it's open to cameras. So you're not going to get any video or photos from it. And I honestly don't know how much they're going to do, because usually those first practices the day after a scrimmage is more of kind of a walkthrough type of situation. So I would imagine the significant stuff we're going to see as far as the media is probably done until that North Alabama game. So yeah, they're shutting it down and going to start preparing for that week 1 matchup.
All right. Well, Andrew, thank you again for coming on. That was Andrew Hutchinson, the best Arkansas sports, once a month. So we'll reconvene in September. We'll gauge on when we feel like maybe a couple games into the season, maybe after that Utah game, but we'll definitely bring you on in September, and then we'll just roll on through October, and maybe we'll do it in the basketball season. You never know. Yep. But I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. It's been fun.
Yes, sir. Well, that will do it for this Friday edition of the Hog Talk podcast, powered by Resident News Network. For Andrew Hutchinson, I'm Porter Hayes, and we will catch you on Sunday evening.